So, so I'm sure all of you know that Richard Kane passed away a few weeks ago, and so we thought we'd start the gallery tonight with just some of his work. And Richard was a physician, practiced in Raleigh, and picked up turning when he retired in 2011. And for someone who was at the craft for such a short period, such a short, but a relatively short period of time, he really captured the artistry of turning as well as the technique. And some people pick up the technique really quickly. Some people have a real good eye for art, but he managed to in a short time. When I found out how short a time he'd been turning, I was quite surprised. And as the facilitator of the gallery, he really did well with it. So I just thought we'd show a little bit of his work. Ted, I know you knew him. Is there anything you want to say and about your experience with him or just knowing him as a person?
Yeah, no, I think you pretty much covered it. He just he was really kind guy, and he really loved doing this wood turning stuff. And as some of his pieces here show, he did some really nice work as well. And he was he always looked to others a lot. He felt like he learned a lot from other people, and so he took a lot of workshops. I think he took almost every workshop we had. He was there, for. But he also went, out to, I don't even know all the places he went, but a lot of different places he went to, national turners and so forth, and took workshops with them, and always brought something back, that was good. And he just got into this piece here, this piercing stuff. He just got into this piercing in the last, I don't know, 6 months or year, and he was doing some really nice work, with that. So yeah, he's a great guy. He's a big loss to the community. I actually have known him for about 20 some years. So, but we kind of lost contact a little bit, and then I met him at one of the Woodturner, one of our guild meetings. So we got reacquainted again there.
Well, I don't think people know. You said he was your surgeon long ago, and you didn't realize it.
Yeah, he was my surgeon.
Woodturning, surgery.
Yeah, same thing, right? Just
sharp tools. Whoever's got the background noise on, could you mute your phone or your computer? Thank you.
These are the few shots that you took at his house.
Yeah, and then that one photo was from one of the workshops, which was a nice one with Jimmy Clues. Yeah, those pieces I took at his house, I think, were the kind of the pieces that he prized, because he had them on essentially his bookshelves and stuff in his house. So I took.
How big is the one we're looking at now? This is gorgeous. How big was that piece? I don't remember that piece ever in our galleries.
Yeah, it's about probably 10 inches tall, or maybe 12. It's not real big.
It looks massive from the photo. That's why I had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he really. I can just remember holding his pieces in the gallery, and I always knew when his piece was coming, or when I had it, just because it had certainly a characteristic flair to it that really was quite accomplished. So. All right. So with that,
before I forget about it, Steve, he's got 3 or 4 boxes full of pieces, finished pieces, and he told me that, some of that stuff he asked me what to do with it. I said, well, we have the bowl thing every year. I said, why don't you just give it to that? So there'll be a contribution from him for that as well.
That's great. No, I look forward to that. I appreciate that, Ted. All right. So with that, we'll start our gallery. And so when you see your piece come up, We got about 20 individual pieces to get through. If we have an hour, that's about three or so minutes each. So just kind of keep that in mind and go through and I will. So Bob.
Yeah, this is just, I've been experimenting with these pod forms. They're hollowed and it's a multi-axis process, and you hollow it like the one from last week or last month. The base down there is actually taken off. You hollow it from the bottom and then you put the base back on. And that line, that burn mark you see down there is really where the joint is for where it was hollowed out. They're kind of fun. They're you get all kinds of different shapes and whatnot. This was I got this idea from an article that I read in AAW. It's a guy by the name of Tom Crabb. If you want to see his article, it's in the spring 2007 issue of AAW. And they're just kind of fun. You know, you can take basically any kind of wood and just kind of work it into any kind of shape you like and just kind of play around with it. So I just kind of found them interesting. So.
And what'd you do to mount that square base on there afterwards, Bob?
It's not mounted on that. I just put that in my little photo booth to kind of raise it up a little bit to get it up in the air so I could get a better photo of it. So I had never worked. I had a piece of elm. This was elm, and I'd never had turned elm before, and it turned out I was surprised how pretty the grain turned out.
Yeah.
What do you use to hollow? Do you have a hollowing system or just?
No, I just used I mean the basic hollowing tools that I have.
Okay. That's very nice.
You put the top hole in at the end or somewhere in the beginning?
No, actually, you begin the process mounting it between centers, and you get a basic shape, and then you actually part off the bottom that you're going to be replacing, and then you remount it. And you start that with you drill it on with a drill. I use like I think it was 5/16 drill. And you just very carefully drill that hole in there, and then you remount it and turn it from there.
Interesting effect.
Really nice.
Yeah.
And how about the finish you have, Bob?
That's just the I sealed it, and I just used the Beal buffing system.
Oh, what'd you seal it with?
Just the Zinsser.
Oh, wow.
Just shellac.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that buffed up quite a bit for just shellac.
Yeah.
What's the size on these?
What's the size there, Bob?
It's about 7 inches tall. I think the largest diameter is about 3 or 3.5 inches.
By the way, the descriptions everyone provided are on the upper right.
Oh yeah.
So the last two questions were like right there. Not that I'm keeping people from buying, but
Anyway, I'm going to play around with a few more forms, see what I can come up with. So they're just kind of fun. They don't take a long time.
I like them.
These these guys are these are called Tibetan spindles. My wife is a fiber artist and has done a lot of spinning and weaving and all kinds of stuff over the years. And she's actually the one who got me started many years ago doing lace bobbins for her. Anyway, she's was interested in these Tibetan spindles. And so I just started making these this last year, trying to play around. There's a whole science to making these things because they're different sizes to spin different types of fibers. The whirl is where you get your inertia for its spinning. So you want dense woods, and basically you have to work with an elliptical form. And it's kind of an interesting study just to understand how these things work. They're very simple. They've been around for 1,000 years, but there's quite a bit of science that's been added to them over the years. But anyway, they're fun to turn, and that's what I've been doing a lot of here lately.
I thought they were swords.
Swords? Yeah, they could have been. Look like.
Depends
I
if
think the world would be reversed though, wouldn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
To protect the other guy's hands.
it? Yeah, right.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
I don't think Bob's with us.
Hey. All right.
Cherry mahogany. That's nice.
Well, that's Bob's box.
Wow.
Oh, he used a piece of that Honduran mahogany. Yeah,
Yeah. I guess that's the top and bottom, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure it would have been hollowing a piece of granite. So,
Actually, the stuff's
Very
quite
dusty.
soft and cuts very easily and makes massive amounts of dust.
All right. Well, he's also got the piece.
so I'm just amazed that there's not a on an end grain turning like that there's not a big check running through the middle of
Yeah.
Give it time.
it.
that was my thought too.
All right. Jeffrey.
Oh, look at there.
Looky there. Norm got us a deal on some Spectraply. I dug out an old Turn Toys book by Richard Raffin and made these two race cars for the grandsons. It's not the first ones of those I've done. Since I got one here with the camera, I don't know, can you guys see that? Yeah, I can see me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
For the little men, bored in the bottom and put a magnet in, and I got a little screw in the bottom of the man, so they stay put.
Cool.
Use some inserts in the wheel. Got them from Town and Country for about 25 cents a piece to make things run true. And whoops, making a mess with the axle. Found out the hard way on some earlier ones, if you don't step it down to go through that little sleeve, if anything at all changes shape, they don't roll. Other than that, whatever you want to do. And I used the leftover pieces to, I have no idea what button I just pushed. I used the leftover pieces to do the kaleidoscopes for the other two grandkids.
Mm.
That's
Hey,
fun.
Jeff, those inserts, are they metal?
Inserts in the kaleidoscope.
No, in the cars for the
No,
wheels.
it's a piece of Delrin plastic,
Oh, okay.
smooth as silk. Actually comes with a fat edge on it that I cut off because it just didn't fit flush into a curved piece. So I cut the fat end of them off with a hacksaw and glued them in with epoxy. But
There you go.
that keeps them rolling smooth.
Cool.
Yeah, for 39 cents an insert, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
I really like the Spectraply too. It makes them
Yeah.
really
It
fun.
gives it an aerodynamic look, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The thing
Racing
about
strike.
The thing about Spectraply, these things are turned a bit off center, so the bottoms are flat. And if you've got a big piece of that blue Spectraply that hasn't been, that's on the outside of a part, it will transfer blue dye to your hands big time. And it took 4 coats of urethane varnish on the bottom of those 2 pieces on the blue to stop them from transferring onto my hands. And, I can just imagine how irritated the mothers would have been if their kids said, "Hey, mommy, look, my hands are blue."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on, I've noticed it depends on the colors. Certain colors tend to bleed a little more than others, like particularly the gray and the blue spectrums.
Yes,
I don't know what the gray blue combination. It's tricky when sanding because if you don't seal it, you'll get a lot of bleed over from your sanding grits. Most of the colors I don't have that problem, but on those you got to watch out.
Well, that's interesting. It must be stuff from Conestoga. You know, I've been turning it for years from the stuff from the scraps from the sporting goods place, and I've never had it bleed onto my hands. So it must be something to, about the source.
But I said
Act-
just a particular color, just a certain gray and blue shade, and everything else is fine.
the other thing that I think I figured out is if it's on the outside of the piece, it didn't get coated with glue and sandwiched, which would seal it. So once you turn through the very outer layer, I haven't had any transfer problems. It's only the fact that these are done off center with a flat bottom, and I left the glue on the bottom that caused the trouble.
Right. Interesting.
So if you'd had if the pink had been on the bottom,
Another one.
Hold on a second, Jeff. LF, it's hard to hear you. You're coming through really muddied.
Me?
No,
no,
LF. Yeah,
sorry, is this any better?
a little bit.
A little bit.
Well,
Yeah, I'm saying, so if the pink had been the bottom layer, you would have been okay.
If I understood you right, yes. When you get a piece of this stuff, the very top and bottom layer haven't been soaked in glue. They're likely to transfer. Once you get into the middle of these things, I'm figuring all that glue they use to laminate it sealed it up real well, and you don't have the problem.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is a design I've been working on. This is a baby rattle with a built-in handle / teething ring. Done on 2 axes, 2 by 2 by 6 piece of cherry. I'd rather my grandkids chew on that than plastic from China. I drill a 1-inch hole, dead center, about 1 inch from one end. I'm mounted in between centers, chuck on bar. I'll get it straight in a minute. Tenon on both ends. The ball is a box that's eventually glued shut. So with a tenon on the end of that ball, you can turn that piece around and hollow it out. 7 or so dried black-eyed peas or similar, and shake it, see if you like the sound. If you've got it close to what you want, glue it up. If you don't get quite the sound, turn it a little bit thinner, but I like to glue it at about 1/4 inch thickness, shake it, turn it down to where it sounds right. So that gives you about a 3/16 wall. Hide the seam with some burn lines. The fun part is then after the fact, I'll put it on a 1-inch jam chuck through that 1-inch hole in the middle and turn it on the other axis. Turn it that way, which makes it for lots of fun, and shave it down flat with the handle. You got to be real careful not to go too far anywhere, and if you were off center anywhere when you mounted it, you're going to got a lot of sanding to do, but makes for fun stuff, and the kids seem to love them. I finished that with butcher block oil because you know it's going in their mouth.
That might make an interesting breakout sometime, or at least some process photos to help get a better picture of your method.
I will be more than happy to generate a few of those for you, or do a breakout if anybody wants to come over here and make a mess.
Virtual
Mess we can do.
There you go.
all right. Thanks, Jeff.
I'm going to move this one up first, and I'll go back to the other one.
Yeah, thank you, Norm. So this is my first attempt at a square platter, and I don't really like it. I mean, it's okay, but it's made from camphor, and when I turned it, the edge, the surrounding edge, had some streaks in it that were so dark it looked like it had been burned. It was just natural streaks in the wood, but I didn't care for it. It looked very unbalanced and everything. So I thought, well, maybe I'll color the rim instead. Or first I tried to burn it. I didn't like that, so I put it back on the lathe and took that off. And then I carved it with rotary chisel, and then put it back on the lathe and used an airbrush to color it. So 3 different colors, used yellow, green, and black on it, and then some lacquer to finish the thing. As you saw in the other picture, the tenon is still on it because I may decide to change it again. Don't know.
So John, Steve, the one thing that and it's hard to tell from this profile whether it's, but usually when you see stuff like that, you want to see the curve extend from the top into the bottom or the bottom into the top, and it looks like it doesn't really. It makes a really interesting illusion when it looks like it's just a rim sitting on a bowl.
Yeah. No,
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally agree with you. Where the bottom half doesn't blend with the
Right.
top part of the bowl.
Yep.
But
looking at it from the top, I mean, I'd love. It's actually the effect on the top and the thick. You got the rim all the same thickness, which is difficult, and it's really a stunning looking piece. And again, it's just minor criticism on the form there.
Well, let me counter you there though. So the one thing about square platters, I've done a few, is that you learn real quick how what we think is an even wall thickness really isn't.
Yeah.
You see the very corners, and as you go down and get thicker, a platter helps you figure that out right quick.
Yep.
But I agree with Steve. If you still have the tenon, I would remount it and work on just the outside to bring that wall thinner and try and make it one continuous line that just falls into the bowl rather abruptly.
yeah, similar to, I don't know if you guys remember from the last gallery that we did, I call it a Saturn bowl.
Right.
It had kind of the Saturn rim around it. And that one, I made a couple more since then. And I did exactly what you're describing, tried to blend so that line was consistent. But on this one, that's a good point. I could put it back on the lathe and probably touch that up a little.
If it blows up, blame Norm, not me.
If you pass it around, I need to really see it.
The good news is most of the finishes that you put on it don't give off toxic smoke if you blow it up and throw it in the burn pile.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, don't burn polyurethanes.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a burn pile piece.
And again, we didn't hear you say it again.
I don't think that's going to be a burn pile piece.
Oh yeah, I agree. No.
No, he's probably got at least 30 minutes in that piece.
Yeah, I got a few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can, on the next piece, skip to the second picture because that's the, there we go. So this was, I'd seen an image and I don't know, actually, I don't even remember where it came from. Maybe somebody else does here, of this kind of bowl within a bowl look where it's carved and textured and pierced. And then the other picture just shows that the inside of that also has the texturing all the way down, through the bottom of the bowl. And then I finished
a picture with the lid on.
Yeah, I could have, I guess, but but I didn't. But
Now
actually, the lid I made after the fact. I was showing this to my son-in-law, and he goes, "Hey, you should have a lid for that." And so I said, "Okay." And so I made
so
a
it's
lid.
not the same blank?
It is the same piece of walnut. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it came from Tio, as a matter of fact, from his property.
What's the grain orientation? It's not a spindle. Is it a side grain?
It is I think it's a side grain.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it running across the lid at least.
Right.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like side grain.
Yeah.
So, but the piece that's on the right in this picture, that's all one piece, including the part that's pierced?
Yes, all one piece.
That's very nice.
And
Oh.
then what'd you do to the rim there? That black, did you just blacken that?
Yes, I used a black alcohol pen
Yeah,
while it was on the lathe. So,
okay,
you know, just spun it real slow and
yeah.
put the pen up against it and colored it.
At 5 inches and 4 inches, you must have had a lot of fun texturing the inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's a labor of love.
Or just a labor.
Or just a labor, yeah.
And
Very
It
nice.
looks good. It looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's
These
very
are all,
informative.
you know, and most of what I show here is just, you know, it's my first attempt, and I'm sure the second one could look better, but
What's your finish on this? Anything?
just walnut oil on this one.
Uh-huh.
Very nice.
I
Thank you.
really, really like the texture on that.
You like the what?
The texture.
Oh, the texture. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was done with just a saber tooth. Well, the piercing was just done with a drill bit, because those are, you see, they're nice round holes. But the texturing was done with a small round saber tooth thing on my micro motor.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Ella, if you're up next. I'm not sure which go first here.
Probably just this one. I just really like the spalting in this bowl and the grain in it. It's a really nice piece to turn. I turned it thin, but one of the few pieces I did not turn through the bottom. So
10-in or recess?
what's that?
Was it a 10-in or a recess?
It was a 10. No, excuse me. That one was a recess.
Higher risk of getting through the bottom on those.
Yeah, I have learned that lesson.
So what do you have a hollowing system, or there's just hand hollow? And how did you hollow this?
I hollowed this one with a, at that time, I'm trying to remember, this is a relatively old piece that is actually from about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I don't think I had much other than scrapers. I think I had just common scrapers. I don't think I had much else.
Okay.
That's why the opening at the top is larger than I wanted it to be.
Right.
Nice shape.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
see
more-
any
Beautiful shape.
flaws
That's
in
a beautiful
all.
wood. The
nice.
thing that if this was a live gallery, you would see there are some cracks in the top where I actually got it too hot getting that burn line around the edge. And there are some cracks there. A lesson learned.
Yep. No, I've been there.
This is a fruit bowl I did. At the time, I was trying to do a rim that actually, if you go back to this one doesn't show up very well either, but the rim rolls over, and I found that very, very difficult to do. This is one of the pieces I did that it was lesser. I gave my father-in-law the one that I actually accomplished the most, but it's something about the grain in that rolling all the way over and then back up that makes it extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I actually succeeded in turning my father-in-law's bowl, I decided it's not only difficult, but it's kind of ugly. So I decided maybe not.
Yeah. So when you have a flat rim like that, in general, at least I try not to make it, horizontal, to give it some, either angle it or put a cove in it or something that, yeah, because when you see it, when you look at it from the profile view, that just having it go straight across it, I think it detracts from the beauty of that piece of wood. I mean, that's a stunning piece of wood. The figure in there almost looks like a tree growing on the inside of it.
Yeah, it was a beautiful piece of wood, and I don't know if you can see
The undercut.
the contour better
Yep.
now, but I really like the piece of wood. And this one, you know how wood redesigns itself.
Yep.
This one did it several times, and the rim actually wraps over, so it is constant curves, but not as good. It turned out to be something that I was fighting, trying to find something unique that turned out not to be as good as I wanted. So,
Right.
but it was a beautiful piece of wood.
Still is. Quick note, folks, on photos for this gallery. What I would urge you to do, and I know, John, you're a photographer, so you do what you want, with no flaw there. Generally take one shot that is your presentation of the piece. On the second shot, just flip it over if it's a bowl and show us the bottom. Don't go for a second angle unless there's something really particularly special you want to show. It makes it easier. If it's a box, one closed, one open, that's it. But like I say, there's one shot that'll be the gallery. The second one's just to show us an angle because we're not there.
Next.
That's me. So you might have seen this piece. I brought it to a gallery when it was half finished, and that crack you see was pretty significant. And I was afraid to take this one down because it was a pretty severe crack. But as Aleph just said, it's too pretty a piece of wood to give up on. So it was sitting inside my shop, and I just kept pouring thin CA into it, and pouring thin CA, and I finally decided to fill the visible void with some brass. And it took a while, and it made a heck of a mess. It still kills me, is it shows up kind of nicely on the outside, but on the front, I turned it all away. You just couldn't see any more of that brass powder, so it doesn't have that same contrast. But again, it was a little too scary for me to take that one down real thin. So now I was turning some cedar balls, actually did a little video on turning small spheres. So it's kind of fun. You can spin them off in the rim.
Yeah, that's nice. That is a spectacular piece of wood.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try some wipe-on poly with it. I've got some that I haven't tried yet, and I've not tried that. But I remember Jeff had said that's probably one of the better finishes. I'm going to give it a shot.
It's a beautiful piece of wood, but the contrast in the cedar balls was complimentary too. But gosh, that's a beautiful piece of wood.
Thanks. I didn't make the wood. Just because I haven't turned much of anything else. This is the last thing I turned before COVID, so I figured I'd pull them up. So just a couple of pens. I have family and friends who are cat lovers, and I figured, I'll have to pick up a couple of these kits and try them out because I know people like them. It didn't photograph well, but the olive wood is wonderful for pens. It's just real pretty. It's a little yellowy here. It's a little bit richer in real life.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, I'm not recommending this at all, but you may have seen them on Pen Turn, one of the kit places, at Craft Supply maybe. They're little vent fans. They're like 2 inches. The kit's super easy to do. It's just kind of weird and silly. So there's a little magnetic back that comes out, and they give you these little discs that you can put, that one comes scented and the other one you can put diffuser oil in. And basically it's not shown well in the photograph. There's a little guide on the back that you can just stick it in your car vent. And as the air blows through your vent, the fan goes around and it diffuses whatever it is. Something to do with 2-inch scraps, I guess. I don't know if they're going to sell, but I won't be buying more because they're way too expensive. Sometimes I see something like this on like those stores, and I buy them to try them and see if they sell. And if it turns out they sell, I go looking for sources in China or something for the hardware. Because it's just not cost effective if I'm paying, I think it was like 30 or 40 bucks for a set of 3 of these things. It's like, I'm not, if I get 25 bucks for that, I'm lucky.
Yeah. Yep.
Not a lot of time in it, but it's just, I try stuff like that once in a while if it catches my eye. My wife says that stuff will sell. We'll see.
Well, you're probably the only one making it, so no competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then she'll complain about you not getting enough money for it.
I don't think Ronnie has joined us. Nope, she's not on the call. So she sent this beautiful piece in this. She sent 2 files. One of them was a photo. The other one was like a 3-second video that was blurry. I think it was meant to be the other side, but it didn't work out. I emailed her. She sent this the day the newsletter went out, but she never got back to me. But it's a real pretty piece of pearl.
Yeah, it is.
I would encourage
Also,
for the next gallery to send the more details, the other side. That is a beautiful piece, but my imagination has to fill in a whole lot there.
well, again, there was a second file. It just wasn't usable.
Yeah.
Here's her other piece. That's the overview, but it's some kind of a box, apparently.
Yeah, it looks like it might be milliput in there, but not sure.
It's another one. Bowl with lid. I'm sorry, that's a box to me. Even you, John, it's a box. If it's got a lid, it's a box. It ceases to be a bowl.
But I love the rim and the bottom. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful choice.
And have anyone turned Wengi?
Yes.
Been a while, but I have, yeah.
Not a fun wood.
No.
Not if you get a sliver.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah, those splinters are a pain.
Yes. 100% guarantee they're going to get infected.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. Where's little boy blue? Oh,
So I had this idea of trying to cut through grooves in a bowl and then fill them with resin. This was my second attempt. This is the stage where, so you cut the grooves on the outside, you leave it thick. I used the Paul Howard router jig to cut those grooves, and then this attempt I tried to use duct tape to seal up the grooves and then create a dam around the top and fill that up with resin. And unfortunately, the first time I did it, the duct tape didn't seal well enough to the wood. It's the duct tape. It's Gorilla tape. It's really sticky, but it's a little too stiff to bend around the contour. So all it takes is one little place where it's open. So the next time, so about half of it leaked out and into the bottom of my pressure pot. And so then I filled it again with, I used masking tape to seal it, and fortunately got away with, you can't see a hard line in the joint, because a lot of times with Illuminate you do that, but so it's Illuminate with blue dye with they're called transfer pigments, so they're pearlescent, but they actually change colors with the different ways you look at it. So anyway, after you pour the resin in and set it, then you go back, remount it, and you turn the inside out until you uncover the grooves. So it's cherry. It's about 10 inches, and the first one I did this, and I used liquid diamonds, which is an epoxy resin, and you don't need a pressure pot for. But what I found was when you cut the grooves and what's the side grain of the bowl, you expose end grain in the groove, and the resin seeped into the pores of the wood, and it essentially turned it black. So when I did, this one I changed to Illuminate, and I coated the grooves before I put the resin. I put some sanding sealer in there, and so that I didn't get any bleed through on this one. My guess is it's probably a lot more likely it's because it's Illuminate, which is a lot more viscous than the epoxy resins. So, or at least it's more than liquid diamond. So anyway, that's just, I won't make it. I don't know. If I sell it, I might make another one. I don't know. But it was a lot of work and a lot of frustration.
You'll sell it. What I don't understand is, looking at this cut, how does the epoxy rise above the rim?
So after I covered all the grooves, I created a dam with tape on the, I ran duct tape around the inside and outside in order to create a kind of a dam so that the resin came up over the top.
Got it. Well, thank you. That makes
What kind of sanding sealer did you use before you put the Illuminate in it?
Probably Zinsser. It's a whatever shellac I had. So, so just so you know, that the picture, the other picture is the first. That's the first attempt. Same same concept, but that's the first bowl I did that had that one doesn't have the sanding sealer on it.
Oh, so these aren't the same bowl?
No, I just wanted to show the technique. So.
How did you finish the rim of that then? Is that sanded and polished, or?
Yep. Yeah, the same way I finish all the resins. It's, normally I sand to 400. When you're doing resin, you sand to 2000, and then I use what I did on this one is I put Sealacell on the whole thing, including the wood. But then I came back I use automotive polishes to polish the acrylic, the resins. And so after I sealed the wood, I came back with the automotive finish and just polished the resin. And it's interesting, the Sealacell actually worked fine on the resin. It actually made it deeper. It kind of gave it some depth to it. But if you look in that picture, you can see the bottom's a little bit darker in the grooves there, and that's because I didn't. The second batch was a little lighter than the first batch that I made, but that's where it went in. Fortunately it's uneven as you go around, so your eye's not drawn to it as a joint, because some of the grooves didn't leak at all, and some of them every bit of it leaked out. So it created kind of an interesting effect of the variations in color.
So that's not an effect of the pigment pooling at the bottom of your pour?
Nope, that's a different pour.
Okay.
Now, particularly with Illuminate, there's no segregation of color at all. The epoxy resins, because the epoxy resins, at least the liquid diamonds that I'm using, is water thin, and it takes an hour to set. So the combination of those two things, you can get some segregation, not of the dye that goes in it, but if you use pearlescent powders, you can get some movement on it. So, all right.
I figured first.
Yeah. So this is the before. This is I've mentioned before, I've spent a lot of time in Mike Smith's junk pile, and I found this piece of wormy pecan. It's wormy. It was spalted. It was punky, but I just love all the holes. So I took it. I turned it into that piece is about 4 inches thick. Turned it into a cylinder, cleaned out all the holes that I could reach with a rotary tool with a burr on it, and then stabilized it with cactus juice with a little bit of red dye in it, and then put it into a piece of PVC pipe and filled it with Illuminate, filled the holes with Illuminate, and then hollowed it out. It's about 10 inches tall, but I just, some people hate this look, the wormy stuff, but I just find it fascinating. So it's just so random. I mean, you could carve holes and stuff, but it's just so random the way it turns out. So, and this is it's illuminite. It's two colors. The second color is just sparkle gold pearlescent powder, and you wait until the illuminite starts to set before you pour either color in. You wait till it hits about 95 degrees, and it becomes a little bit more viscous, and you pour it in and get it. But you have about 2 minutes to get that thing poured and buttoned up once it hits 95 degrees. But you tend to get more segregation of the colors if you do it that way.
But if you're pouring down the end of a pipe, how do you control distribution?
I pour some, and then I pour the other one. So I have about 1/8 of an inch annulus around the blank inside the pipe, and I have the pipe extends up about 1 inch above the top of the blank, and I just pour it over the top and around the annulus, and I have 2 cups, one with one color, one with the other. I go around with one, go around with the other, go around, and I just alternate between the two until it's filled.
Gotcha. Stefan, you made it. You're muted.
Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. So, yes, start with this one. So this is not a technically difficult activity, but we have a graduation coming up of some junior physicians at UNC, and I thought I'd make some trophies for them. I've made a few before for a running friend of mine. And this time I went through my workshop and saw what kind of wood I had in the right sizes. And I picked 7 or 8 different woods and just turned these chalices or trophies or mementos. And it's just fun to do. They are finished with a Beal system so that the final finish is Canuba wax. And I'm going to engrave them at the bottom. Norm, I'm still struggling with my engraver. The same one that you have that you introduced to the club 1.5 years ago, which I never got to use here at home with my Apple computer. But somebody just put a PC software on my Apple computer, and hopefully that will work. But that made it difficult for me to get into the call tonight, I think. Be that as it may. So the engraving is still to take place, and then the graduation is in June. This is a cherry wood, and my favorite, if you go back, is the dark in the front to the left, that's walnut. If I just go through the woods from the left to the right, the most left one is cedar of Lebanon. Then in the back, the second to the left is, I think, also a black walnut, but that's the one I'm not sure about. The front is black walnut. Behind it then, the fourth to the left is red maple. Then way in the back, the whitish one is hackberry. And the one in front is obviously eastern red cedar. And the second to the right is the cherry, the black cherry, which is interesting with that white stripe that goes through it. And then the rightmost in the back is apple, which is interesting, but a little on the bland side. And that's really what it is.
Cool.
Nice collection. Yeah.
Thank you. And then this is somebody in Salt Lake City had a newborn baby, an acquaintance of mine, and wanted a dark box.
That's a ball with the lid.
They wanted a black box, and and you know I like to make spheres, so I hollowed this one out. And I had that for a while, and then the question came up. I have these little plastic rings, the polyester see-through, but they're not particularly nice. So then I wanted to make a base, and I asked Norm 4 weeks ago how to really put a piece of wood on the lathe that's not centered. And he said, use the kids' hot glue. And I have 4 children, and they all have hot glue guns, these 995 hot glue guns. And I never thought they would work, because I thought if you spin it, whatever, 1500 RPM, it will come off. But it does not. It's surprisingly solid. So then I took the hackberry, which you don't see here, but I made a little shallow groove into it so that the sphere fits into it, and it's a very solid hold for it. So I've liked that technique. I've used that a couple of other times on other woods, and it's a nice way to make a off-center slight indentation.
Just to be clear, I did not suggest you use your kid's glue gun. I specifically said you should get a better glue gun than the $10 version. So be careful.
I said that, and I thought about what is the difference between a more expensive and the kid's glue gun.
The temperature. The temperature.
Yeah, but the temperature didn't matter to me as long as the glue melts. So it doesn't really matter to me what temperature you have, as long as
if it well, so you haven't seen a real glue gun, but you will if you ever try a real glue gun. You'll notice that it melts to almost pouring state. Yours, the kid ones, get soft, and they do adhere a little bit, but really temperature is important on getting a solid glue fix. So just be careful with that. It's not a lot of money. You can get a good one for $20, $25.
Yeah.
Yes, so it was not the money I wanted to save. I actually looked at it and I tried to understand what's really the difference as long as it melts. But you are saying the kid's glue only gets into a kind of softish state, and the other one gets really a dripping melting.
Yes,
Right.
the professional grade will get it hot enough to burn your fingers. It will go crystal clear. It takes a lot longer to set. It's a heck of a lot better bond, and it's a whole lot harder to peel it off of your wood. So leave a little extra for sanding.
So then the question is, are there different glues that people use? Is the kid's glue different to one that you need the higher temperature for? Or is that the same glue stick?
No, it's a different glue stick, and they actually say that there are some glue sticks that make a stronger bond than others. I don't know whether they do or not, but they the higher temperature guns need the higher temperature glue.
Yeah.
I bought my setup at Lowe's. It's worked for years and does the job. That's how, when I take that baby rattle and put it on the jam chuck, it gets hot glued thoroughly just to make sure I don't wind up eating the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm cheaper than anybody when it comes to stuff, but that you're just taking too big a chance, because you know you got something that's off center. So I would definitely spend the extra, what, $20 to get it a little bit safer.
Good. I appreciate the scientific background that you guys provided. The wood is hackberry, and it's a crotch piece. It was not a very big crotch piece. It was interesting, but not particularly nice. And I've had the experience with this particular hackberry tree. It immediately develops fungus. And I talked to Ted about this, and Ted said he also had a hackberry tree that just got so much fungus that he couldn't use and threw it away. This piece here, I processed very rapidly, so I did not develop any fungus stain. But it was also not as interesting as I had hoped it would be. But for this purpose here, the relatively whitishness of the hackberry versus the dark of the walnut, I thought looked acceptable.
Okay, we're nearing the end.
Yeah.
Ed, you're the last two pieces.
Okay. All right. So this is another collaboration piece with my sister and I. A glass liner goes inside of this up to the top of the inside rim. And this is crepe myrtle, this piece of wood. And I wanted to leave some of the natural bark elements of it in there when I made it. And I rough turned it, and I didn't have the base that you see on there now. It was just the vase. But somehow I had lost the liner for it, so I had to put another liner in. It was taller, and so I thought, well, I think I got enough room there to go all the way down through it. Well, I ended up, the walls were too thin when I got to the bottom, so I needed to put this base on it. So I made this base out of another piece of wood and put it on there. I actually haven't glued it together yet because I left it in two pieces. It was a little easier for my sister to work with. And then she colored and so forth. And I haven't put a finish on it yet, but I'll probably put Krylon 1311 on it, to keep it a kind of a flat look to it, or a non-glossy look to it.
How did it turn?
How did it turn?
Yeah, I haven't turned crepe myrtle. I don't know if it was wet or dry.
Well, I turned it when it was both, wet and dry, but it turns, yeah, it's easy, pretty easy turning, I think. I like it. And working with it, it's you can see, like, on the photo on the right, if you look inside, you can see it's almost like a burl in there, so sometimes you get some really interesting grain out of it, the wood. But yeah, I pick up pieces of it from here and then. I had one guy place down the street took one down a couple of years ago. It was probably, which you don't usually get, it was probably 18 inches to 20 inches big around. It was huge.
That's all wondering.
Yeah, so make some nice pieces out of that. So it was fun. It was fun to do, and she did a great job, of course, with her artwork on it.
Hey, Ted, what did she use for the green? You said
She
ink.
used ink. Yeah, she used,
Really?
yeah, that's what she told me. She used all ink on it. So, and then the outlines are burned on it. Where the edge of the flowers are and
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it. So, yeah, and she matched them up pretty good going through between the top and the bottom of it as well.
Ted,
And
I
did you do
assume
the carving? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I assume that you seal that before she paints on it or uses the ink.
No, it's not sealed at all.
Really? And you don't
Yeah.
get any bleeding? Huh.
No. Well, she had some problems with that, and I talked to her about that because I didn't put any sealer on it because I didn't know whether she was going to burn it or color it, originally. And I thought it would be more consistent without the sealer on it. And if she was going to ink it, it could go in, or paint it or dye it, it could go in the wood. With dyes, she's had a little bit more problem with that. I guess the ink has more pigment in it, so it's less of a problem. And I think also if you burn those edges, it kind of like seals the end piece,
Oh, right.
the fibers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would help.
Yeah.
Very nice.
You don't want to seal it and burn it, probably.
No, it'd be a little. I just worry about the fumes and stuff doing that for her. So.
All right, last piece.
Yeah, and this is the piece that I turned for Richard Kane for his urn, and he asked me about a week before he passed away, and I thought I had a little bit more time to do it, but it was actually a wet piece of cherry that I harvested on a tree that got knocked down probably a month or maybe no more than 2 months prior. So at least it came down this winter, so it was a little bit, less probably wet, but it was still pretty green. So, but it turned. It was a little soft on the where the pith is there side of it. On the right hand side you're seeing there, and so I had to do a lot of clean cutting essentially to get it to come out nice and smooth on that, but. Yeah, and then I just use a piece of plastic PVC pipe because I didn't have any time to do anything else, and I wasn't going to take. I've done a little bit of threading, but I don't have threaders, and I didn't want to go through experiment with it after I went through all the work of creating this urn. So I got this PVC pipe, and I learned a lot doing it. Let's put it that way. It didn't work all that great the first few times. I spent probably about 6 hours getting that insert lined up so that when you turned it in and, it would line up the grain at the end, of the piece. So it took me quite a bit. And to do that, I had put the top insert in first on the very top piece, and I put the second one in the bottom, which was good because I could line it up and then pull it straight out and I could work with it. Well, in doing all that, I ended up breaking the top one loose, and the bottom was hardening really well. So I had a lot harder time getting it lined up, doing it with the top piece. So 2 lessons I learned is probably super glue is not a good glue for it. You know, number one, probably an epoxy would have been a whole lot better doing that.
Well,
And
I mean, you set one in, you set your base in, and then you screw it on, and then you basically with it the screw where you want it. That's when you set the top in with glue.
well, then your glue would be running all over the top of it. I think it's the opposite way is a better way to do it. Set the top part piece in
Well,
there.
either one. The point is, one is
Yeah.
state.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly what you're saying.
There's
Well,
I forget who the manufacturers. They sell brass inserts for this.
Yeah. I got, there was an article in AW and I sent an email to the guy that did it and he sent me back the place. The inserts are quite expensive. Those are like $30,
Yeah.
you know, $30, $40. And I didn't have time, you know, to do that.
Gotcha.
So
The
I
other
went
thing-
with this. And since then I got some black pieces, which look a little bit better than that gray plastic, you know, so next time I
Yep.
try it, no, I'll maybe try it with the black
And
plastic.
you can go to Ferguson's Plumbing Supply,
Yeah.
and they have some various brass fittings that you
Huh.
can buy and cut apart. They have very fine threads on them.
Okay.
So you might want to, when you have time, just, you know,
Swing by
go over
there.
to
Yeah.
Ferguson's and see what they have as far as brass fittings.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I'm going to put out there is when I'm in a situation where I don't want the glue to run, there is the 2-component epoxy gel. You mix A and B together and it's like Vaseline and thicker. I mean, it's heavy, viscous, but well, the real technical term is highly pseudoplastic. But you can rub that on and put it where you want it and it doesn't move. And in a situation like this where you don't want the glue to run, that's exactly why the real pasty 2-component epoxy exists. Usually hanging on the shelf at Lowe's in the $4.95 size.
Hmm.
Not to
Okay.
start a whole new subject here, but has anybody seen this UV cure glue? I've seen a couple ads for it now. It's the stuff that the dentists use, you know,
Yeah.
but it's UV cure and it comes with a little tube with a little UV light on the end of it, and
Oh.
it seems fascinating to me. But if it works,
It
Jeff,
It
It
will
works in
work.
the dentist's office. They've done it to me before.
Yeah, but it's usually
Mhm.
very thin. It's
Yeah.
very runny.
The thing I'll put out there, Steve, if you go that route, be damn sure you got on gloves. That stuff will eat you alive. And if you've used it, wash your hands real good before you go to the bathroom, not after you go to the bathroom. And yeah, I work with that chemistry and I'm unfortunately speaking from experience.
all right, enough said.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Try explaining that one to your wife.
I have to agree with Jeffrey. I worked with some of that stuff back in the late 60s. And it was kind of amazing. The work I was doing, I was trying to glue glass together. And we could put it together, hold it the way we wanted it, and then turn the UV light on for about 30 seconds. And it was set solid. And
but you couldn't take your hand
impressive
away.
stuff.
That's the same technology they use. You see them on Safe Light Repair, Safe Light Replace to fill the cracks in your windshield. Yes, Steve, it works. It's very fast, but it will rough on your skin and your nose and your eyes.
Well, thanks.
Hey, Ted,
Wow.
beautiful job in the urns, by the way, or in the urn.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the family really appreciated it.
Thank you. Yeah. The sad part of it is that this urn they buried. So all I have left is the pictures, or you know,
Well,
it was not one to sit on the mantle or whatever.
Yeah.
right. Well, and I'm sure we can all appreciate the fact that you're turning this thing for someone, a friend who's passed, and not only are you dealing with that emotion, but the emotion of having to get it done.
Yeah.
Turning this thing for someone, a friend who's passed, and not only are you dealing with that emotion, but the emotion of having to get it done.
Yeah.
On a very tight schedule just makes it all that more difficult. And a lot of times those two things merging together is not a recipe for success. So kudos to you for pulling it off. That's really quite good. And the fact that and the fact that he would ask you to do that, what a show of respect and from him. I mean that really, that's very nice.
Yeah, I was honored to do it. It was I was very nervous about it. As you can guess, doing it and everything, and under time constraints and all that, it was a bit of a challenge.
Yep. No, I think that good job. I mean, I'm glad you were there for him and for his family to do that. So, all right, folks. Well, that's it. So next week we have Mark Slay, right, Ted?
That's correct. Mark
Watch
Slay
party
next week. Wood slicing. Yeah, that'll be great. And
That's a good one.
yep. And then after that, we'll have Cindy for the June, what is it, 16th or something like that. I can't remember the date offhand. And we have Cindy Drozda, and then a gallery. We don't have a third session planned yet, but we'll discuss that between now and then, and probably come up with something if we think we get enough participants.
It's June 11th, Ted.
June 11th. Thank you.
For Cindy.
Yep. And then we have tips and techniques in the July, and then follow with the gallery. And then August now, Barbara Dill canceled on us. So we were able to secure Mike Mahoney. And so Mike Mahoney is going to do a session for us, and we're going to work with him on the topic. He can do lots of stuff, so we'll figure out what best fits the club. And
Yeah, I don't think he does off axis.
Actually, he does. He does. He
doesn't necessarily do it intentionally, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we'll that should be good. So
Good lineup.
good lineup for the next few months, and then we'll see how things progress. Whether the craft center opens back up again and all that. And if not, or whatever, we'll have to we'll figure it out.
So thanks, Ted. So and we wanted to keep this to an hour and 15 minutes. We just got a couple minutes left. Any feedback from those who are still on as to this gallery and does this format work? 2 pieces? Like I said, we're trying really hard to keep this to no more than an hour and 15 minutes, the entire meeting. But any thoughts or suggestions?
Yeah, I got a thought. This is wonderful because we can talk about the piece. Everybody can ask their questions, and we don't have to get the whole business done in 15 minutes. So the demonstrator can get on with the dog and pony show. So
right.
This is wonderful.
I actually, Steve, I think it's even a better format than what we do at the live meetings, because you can see the item close up, and as Jeff said, you can ask questions, and I think you see a whole lot more detail than you do when we're holding it up at one of the meetings. And I know people can pick it up at a meeting, but not everybody has the opportunity to do that.
So here too, granted, it's in front of
LF, we can hardly hear you. You're like in a tunnel.
sorry.
Yeah, maybe just speak louder.
Yell at us.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's it. We can't hear you.
It's tinny. Yeah.
Here's the thought. If we have the regular gallery and limit it to 15 minutes, once we're up and running at the craft center, we can then do this the following Thursday, where we have more or less the same pieces and all night to talk about them.
Yeah, if there's interest, I was thinking the same thing. We could do that. We could basically guarantee that our gallery meeting portion is 10 minutes tops, and then say, now that we have the photographs, you don't even have to send them to us. We'll do this remotely next week. We'll see if folks are interested in that.
My personal opinion is this is an hour well spent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 I switched microphones, but what I really like is that you can hold up the piece if somebody has questions or anything. The one thing I would like to be able to do, if we can do a video, just a video clip instead of the photo, the still photo, just one video clip of it circling all the way around, that might be a good thing. I just don't know if we can do it or not.
The only problem is Facebook will not allow a gallery of both.
Gotcha.
So the place we put them would not basically, you just can't put a video inside of a photo gallery on Facebook. I don't know why they built it that way.
Well, I think in that case, just being able to hold the piece up in front of the camera is a good option.
Yeah, and we could do it here. It wouldn't be part of the gallery itself. So, and I don't want to get in a world where somebody sent the video but didn't send photos. That's so. Go ahead and send your video next time if it's short. And in this presentation, I can queue it up on a separate screen and show it. But it won't be, ultimately, it won't be on the gallery that we publish, if you will.
Okay.
Right.
So this is actually good. What we're doing here is good practice for our tips and tricks meeting, which will be a departure for us to do this, virtually rather than in person. So but it'll be the same deal. You're going to have to take a couple pictures or, be able to present, your idea. So hopefully this is a good practice and gets us into that mode to do that. But I appreciate your input, and I enjoy the fact that there's people on the call that you don't necessarily have to have submitted something to participate in the call. So, whether or not you have something this month to put in, that's fine. And it'd be nice to. One of the things I would like to get some of our newer turners. I don't want people to be intimidated by the work that's presented here. I'd like it'd be nice to get some of the newer turners even to come in and present work and to be able to. It's a great forum to be able to ask questions and get information. So we need to kind of try to get that message out a little better. That this isn't just for the really experienced turners, because I tell you, some of the stuff I'm intimidated by. So not intimidated, but just in awe of some of the stuff that's happening. And so I don't want people to feel that if they have to match up to this in order to participate. So any opportunity you get to get that message out, I think that's important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. After I submitted mine, I looked at what was submitted last month and said, why in the hell did I ever take pictures of mine?
But even and hopefully that any criticism that is offered is taken in the light of people trying to enhance it. When we talk about form and shape and those types of things, what we're trying to do is to try to get just ideas out, and it's taken in a spirit of just, hey, that this is a person's opinion, and you can take it or leave it. You're free to do, but it is amazing. Sometimes with an experienced turner can look at a form and is something that you might absolutely love, and then you bring it to a professional, or somebody's at some of the shows, and you get a professional that they'll pick it up and hold it and say, if you just did this, and then you do that on the next one, and it turns out well. So
Excellent.
So, all right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time and participation tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks,
Yep,
guys.
Yep.